Hello, my name is Michael Kennedy. I'm the Executive Editor of the Royal Irish Academy's Documents in Irish Foreign Policy series, and today I want to give you a little bit of a preview about our forthcoming volume, which is going to be published in November this year. It's volume 12 in the Documents in Irish Foreign Policy series, and it runs from 1961 to 1965. And over the last year we've been searching through the archives of the Department of Foreign Affairs, the Department of the Taoiseach and the private papers of Frank Aiken at the University College Dublin archives to try and piece together what exactly happened in Irish foreign policy and what Irish foreign policy makers were doing between 1961 and 1965. They're very important years for the history of Irish foreign policy because they see the years in which Ireland was undertaking hugely innovative policies at the United Nations. In particular, the state was playing a very active role in the General Assembly. Ireland was elected to the Security Council for the first time in 1962. And also the state's Irish soldiers were playing a major role in peacekeeping operations, first of all in the Congo, and then from 1964 in Cyprus. But I think one of the key themes in the volume is that it deals with Ireland's first steps in getting involved in the process of European integration. That back in 1961, Ireland applied for EEC membership for the first time. It was a key foreign policy goal of Taoiseach Sean Lemass, and indeed he oriented Irish foreign policy particularly towards EEC membership and to some extent away from the independent stance that Ireland had practiced at the United Nations since the late 1950s under Frank Aiken. Now, the policies included in DIFP 12 cover also a number of milestones in the history of the period. President John F. Kennedy's visit to Ireland in 1963, the application to join the EEC I've just mentioned, the opening of Ireland's first embassy on the African continent in Lagos in Nigeria in 1961. And it also covers an event really where the world was brought to the brink of destruction, and that's the Cuban Missile crisis in the autumn of 1962. And when we were piecing together the documents that were to go into the volume for that period, we happened upon a fact that I don't think has been mentioned in many history books, and that is that during the Cuban Missile crisis, the Minister for External Affairs, Frank Aiken, was at the United Nations General Assembly in New York, and the Taoiseach, Sean Lemass, was visiting German Chancellor Konrad Adenauer in Bonn as part of a tour around the capitals of the 6 members of the EEC to promote Ireland's call or cause to be let into the community. So the management of the Cuban Missile crisis, in particular the question of whether the Irish authorities would check any planes going through Shannon en route to Cuba from the Soviet bloc, was left to Taoiseach Sean McEntee to undertake from a political point of view in Dublin and to brief cabinet colleagues, but also it was undertaken in the Department of External Affairs by the Assistant Secretary in charge of political and international matters, Sheila Murphy. Now, Sheila Murphy is a diplomat that many people would have heard of. She was the most senior female diplomat in the state in the period. Indeed, she was the only female diplomat serving in headquarters at a senior rank up until her retirement in 1964. She was an assistant secretary in 1964, and her role during the Cuban Missile crisis was to manage the throughput of material into Ireland from overseas missions and to make sure that the Taoiseach and the Minister for External Affairs were accurately and competently briefed from the Department of the Taoiseach and from Ireland's diplomats in the missions that Ireland had around the world about what was likely to happen as the world stood on the brink of nuclear destruction. Murphy is someone who many people would have heard of. She left very little mark on the papers in the department, but her signature shows that she was one of the diplomats who, through her career, which lasted from the birth of the state up to 1964 and her retirement, her signature over documents of the utmost importance shows that she, as private secretary to the Secretary General, as a councillor in the political section, and finally as an assistant secretary in charge of the international relations section of the department, was able to exert huge influence on the operation of policy and make sure that the wheels of policy making operated in a coherent and consistent manner.